Auf den Entbindungsstationen zwingt man die Frauen mit Maske zu gebären.
127 Tote, die wir nicht kennen.
Bleiben Sie auf jeden Fall zu Hause.
36 neue
Setzen Sie eine Maske auf. Setzen Sie keine Maske auf. Ein Virus, der irgendwoher kommt. Man verwirrt dich.
1423 bleiben Sie auf jeden Fall zu Hause.
Sobald Sie jemanden glauben lassen, er sei in Lebensgefahr, können Sie sich die Situation beliebig zunutze machen.
Die Masken dürfen nur heruntergezogen werden.
Die Demokratie ist in Frankreich gänzlich ausgehöhlt worden.
Ich habe viel mehr Angst vor meiner Regierung als vor dem Virus. 10-mal mehr.
Es ist kriminell, die Mediziner der Stadt so zu entwaffnen.
Was auf uns wartet, ist ein System der vollständigen Kontrolle, in dem die Freiheit zu einer weit entfernten Erinnerung wird.
Wir reden also nicht von Science Fiction. All das ist real.
Das ist keine Science Fiction, das ist ein Businessmodell.
Diese Regeln werden wir noch laut der Karrierebestritten. Die Gesundheitsämter sagen gestern 4.600
Der Corona-Test hier so stark an.
Hallo und willkommen, liebe Freunde, da draußen im Internet. Ihr seid bei ET Video Content und mein Name ist Eliate. Ich freue mich, dass ihr wieder eingeschaltet habt zu, was ich glaube, wieder eine sehr wichtige, eine sehr interessante Sendung wird, einer etwas anderen Art. Weil heute, liebe Freunde, spreche ich mal wieder über das Thema Kanada. Und das Thema Kanada, das geht uns ja alle ein Stück weit an. Wenn ihr noch nicht ganz wisst, warum, werde ich euch das erklären. Ich spreche heute mit ihm hier, Mr. Michael, ja, Breton heißt er eigentlich, aber er lebt schon länger in Kanada, deshalb nennt er sich Michael Breton. Er ist ein Mensch, den ich kennengelernt habe, wie einige vielleicht von euch, nachdem ihr euch fragen werdet, wer ist denn das? Den hat er noch nie eingepackt oder ausgepackt. Den habe ich kennengelernt aus dem Interview mit Markus Heinz von letzte Woche, als er einer der Journalisten war, der nicht wirklich Journalist ist, sondern eigentlich einfach nur ein Aktivist, einfach nur ein Bürger, so wie viele da draußen in dem Konflikt in Ottawa gerade, der sich eben in der Stadt, ja, um die sich alles drehen wird, auch heute aufhielt und jetzt sich einen Moment zurückgezogen hat, um so ein bisschen halt, ja, neue Kraft zu tanken und gleichzeitig uns Rede und Antwort zu stehen zu dem, was er dort erlebt hat, die letzten Nachrichten zu verifizieren, die uns tagtäglich aus Ottawa eben erreichen, um so ein bisschen zusammen zu spekulieren, ja, wohin denn die Reise eben mit den kanadischen Truckern geht. Denn nach den neuesten Berichten könnte es sein, dass es dort sehr abrupt zu einem Ende kommen kann, was wir natürlich alle nicht hoffen, wovon wir aber leider Gottes, ja, wir können das nicht komplett ausschließen und um so ein bisschen halt zu schauen, wohin also dort die Reise geht, wie gefährlich die Lage vielleicht tatsächlich ist, was vielleicht die nächste, ja, Challenge sein wird, die nächste Herausforderung sein wird, die die Trucker dort vor Ort werden lösen müssen. Dafür habe ich ihn mir hier ins Boot geholt und werde gleich nochmal mit ihm reden. In allererster Linie, liebe Leute, geht es also wirklich nochmal um dieses sehr, sehr wichtige Thema. Und warum ist es eins meiner Themen? Das möchte ich jetzt gerade noch einmal euch mit auf den Weg geben, weil die ganze Welt, das merkt ihr jetzt, schaut jetzt gerade nach Kanada. Wenn ihr meine Sendung dazu am Freitag gesehen habt, dann werdet ihr schon gehört haben, was ich auch in der Analyse mit Uwe damals ja, zutage gefördert habe, nämlich unsere Einschätzung, dass so eine Form des Protestes, auch wenn sie nicht das allererste Mal, ja, so auf dieser Erde halt passiert und angewendet wird, in dieser Dimension, ja, etwas noch nie Dagewesenes darstellt. Ja, dass ein ganzes Land wirklich zusammenkommt, zumindest eine Subgruppe, ja, in diesem Land eben auf diese Art und Weise aus dem ganzen geografischen großen Land zusammenkommt, um ja, hier zu versuchen, ein politisches Zeichen zu setzen und das mit friedlichen, aber motorisierten Mitteln über wer weiß was für einen langen Zeitraum, das werden wir noch alle zusammen sehen, das ist etwas nie Dagesehenes und deshalb werden wir alle, ja, gebannt, ich auf jeden Fall, immer häufig, nein, nicht immer häufiger, aber weiterhin regelmäßig, ja, rüberschauen und alle den Atem anhalten in der Hoffnung, dass die Kanadier es dort so ein bisschen wuppen können, weil wohin Kanada geht, dahin geht auch ein Stück weit die Welt. Wenn die Kanadier dort sang- und klanglos leider Gottes untergehen, ja, mit ihrem riesengroßen Unterfangen, dann wird das auch für uns bedeuten, dass vermutlich Konvois auch auf deutscher oder europäischer Seite nichts bringen werden, egal wie viel Enthusiasmus jetzt gerade vielleicht aus irgendwelchen europäischen Nachbarländern zu uns versucht rüber zu schwappen. Und sollte Kanada tatsächlich den Weg gehen, dass sie dann als glorreiche Sieger hervorgehen aus dieser Nummer, dann werden wir zu Recht sagen können, ja, Kanada, way to go, wunderbar, dass ihr uns den Weg auf gut Deutsch gezeigt habt und dass wir versuchen werden, das jetzt unter anderen Umständen mit aber ähnlichen Mitteln das zu reproduzieren. Insofern, wir drücken natürlich alle 5 Daumen für Kanada und hoffen, dass das klappt und das ist auch für mich der Grund, weshalb ich dieses Mal, ein zweites Mal in unter einer Woche, ja, wirklich den Fokus auf Kanada, also das Ausland lege, nachdem ihr ansonsten mich als rasender Reporter für Deutschland kennt. Ja, aber es ist zu wichtig, was dort geschieht, als dass wir die Augen davor verschließen könnten und deshalb werde ich versuchen, heute noch einmal dieses Thema an euch näher zu bringen. Deshalb, wenn euch das wichtig ist, liebe Freunde, dann teilt bitte diesen Stream. Ja, wichtig wird sein, ich werde mit Michael Breton, heißt der Mann, werde ich auf Englisch sprechen. Das ist seine Hang on, Mike, don't you worry, I'll give you a clear sign once we'll turn to you. Er ist im Hintergrund schon zugeschaltet und freut sich auf das Gespräch, aber ihr habt es mich jetzt gerade schon anmoderieren hören. Wir werden dieses Gespräch auf Englisch führen müssen, liegt einfach daran, dass es sehr schwierig war, die beiden deutschsprachigen Protagonisten, die ich letzten Freitag in den Stream bekommen habe, jetzt noch einmal für diese Sache zu gewinnen. Es ist absolut nachvollziehbar, die haben jetzt, weiß Gott, andere Probleme, ja, dort vor Ort in Ottawa eben zu lösen, ja, nachdem einer von beiden ja ein Truck-Captain ist und der andere zwar in New Brunswick ist, aber ihm direkt zuarbeitet, ja, dass die sich halt für Pressearbeit leider Gottes nicht rund um die Uhr Zeit nehmen können und mit der Zeitverschiebung bin ich froh, dass ich Michael überhaupt gewinnen konnte. Ihr kennt ihn ja als Protagonisten schon vom Kanal von Markus Heinz und als solches, glaube ich, ist es sehr spannend, dass wir ihn hier für ein Follow-up, wie man so schön sagt, gewinnen konnten. Ich werde natürlich weiterhin versuchen, für die Zukunft auch deutschsprachige Journalisten und Leute von vor Ort eben zu gewinnen, aber das wird nicht jedes Mal klappen und ich hoffe, ihr seht mir nach, dass wir dieses Mal dieses Interview in Englisch führen werden. Ich möchte noch einmal ganz kurz darauf hinweisen, dass YouTube zwar also automatisch ja, aber keine Echtzeitübersetzung anbietet, aber dass nachdem dieser Stream gelaufen sein wird, auf YouTube, ihr die Möglichkeit habt, die Untertitel mit einzuschalten und darin könnt ihr im Prinzip dann die Sprache auswählen. Also der automatische, ja, wie sagt man, der Algorithmus, der die ganzen YouTube-Videos permanent scrollt, durchschaut, ja, und dann entsprechend halt vielleicht auch meldet, ja, der weiß halt um den Inhalt von allen Videos, solange dort ein gesprochenes Wort drin vorkommt. Der Vorteil davon ist aber, nachdem das ja ursprünglich negativ klingt, dass eben eine Live-Translation halt eben zwar noch nicht, aber eine the fact translation, also eine Übersetzung, ja, im Nachhinein eben möglich ist und die werdet ihr auf YouTube dazu schalten können. Und damit jetzt genug der Vorrede, liebe Leute. Ich möchte ihn jetzt wirklich dazu holen. Mike, please get ready. I'll try to unmute you right now. So please turn on your mic. Es soll jetzt gehen um Michael. Ich möchte ihn euch noch einmal ganz kurz vorstellen. Dann habe ich ein Sammelsurium an unterschiedlichen Nachrichten, die ich euch hier abfeuern werde. Und ich hoffe, dass ihr reinschaut, um ja, mit mir zusammen so ein bisschen ein Stück weit über den Teich zu gucken und heute euch einen Blick diesbezüglich zu erlauben. Okay, gut, ich hole ihn mir jetzt rein. Hello and welcome to I don't know where you're actually at, dear Michael Breton. I already said in my introduction, which you probably couldn't understand fully, that your name is probably of French origin. I would even say that probably at some point maybe your family lived somewhere in La Bretagne in France, because Breton, as you pronounce this, is just Breton in French, which means the person from Brittany, this marvelous region in France. Nonetheless, please feel very welcome on this channel. And maybe, first of all, how are you? And how do you feel after what must have been a very strenuous week in Ottawa, where you were on the ground last week? Hang on, Mike. Hang on, Mike. We have a technical issues. I'm so sorry. People tell me they can't hear you. So, Leute, ich habe es dieses Mal früher gehört als vorher. Let me just fix that quickly. We didn't actually rehearse that. So, in order for people to hear you, I want them to be able to hear the compliments you just gave back to me. Let me just quickly fix that. And then we'll go again. Vielen lieben Dank, liebe Leute. Ich mache jetzt sofort den Ton für euch alle an. Das kann ja nicht sein, dass ihr den Mann nicht hört. Also, hang on, hang on, hang on. Should be right here somewhere, and then maybe it's here. Maybe just count down from 10 to 0. Let's see if people can hear that. Dear Mike?
You want me to count down?
Well, I suppose that's enough. Liebe Leute, habt ihr schon gehört? It was just about, making some type of noise so that we'll see whether it came through this time. Habt ihr ihn jetzt gehört? Habt ihr Mike gehört, liebe Freunde? Ich schaue gerade mal in den Chat rein. Ich müsste es jetzt eigentlich umgeschalten haben, also ich hoffe. Yes, okay, so they tell me it's on now. Peppy, who is one of my moderators here, thank you very much for being here. Dear Peppy, Dankeschön, liebe Uli, all of the people who make this possible. Vielen, vielen lieben Dank. All right, so let's start again. Dear Mike, welcome to the program. We'll make a clean cut here and make believe as though, my former mistake never happened. All right, so feel very welcome, dear Mike, on this channel. I want to say again, you look fabulous. You have the best camera of any of the guests I've had the privilege to host here over the past 20 months since we're in this miserable position of, this so-called pandemic. At any rate, so you are well, you'll be able to introduce yourself. First, I just wanted to extend a very warm welcome to you. And then I wanted to say you seem to be of French origin. Somehow, over the course of I don't know how many generations, you made it over to Canada. What I know of you to be true for sure, though, is that you were in Ottawa until last week. So please feel free to introduce yourself maybe and just tell us how you got through this very strenuous week last week when you were in Ottawa, reporting from there for all of us.
Yeah, thank you very much, Eli, for the welcome. Ottawa is the epicenter, of course, of the what we refer to as the convoy of freedom, and every day is different. Every day is a different journey. It's very intense. It had its beginnings. The arrival of the trucks was 11 days ago. So it had a weekend, kind of a welcome weekend, and then it had a flow during the week, and then a lot of people came on the weekend. Mm-hmm. And it was a celebratory mood. There's any number of videos possible. There was countless families there celebrating with their children, and I want people to understand at the beginning of this that if any of the mainstream media narrative was true about it being a dangerous place, there is no family on the earth that would take their children into a zone that was dangerous. This is not a dangerous zone. My grandchildren were there. There was bouncy castles, there was celebration, there was singing, there was dancing. It was a constant celebration on the weekend. You couldn't move. There were so many people. I've asked for an estimate and I haven't got an estimate yet. And so we won't talk about the numbers, but it was absolutely overwhelming. And every day there's a slight change in strategy from the people that are pushing back. It was obvious that Sunday night was going to be significant. Sunday night being significant because a lot of the people on the ground, well, they're not people on the ground. They're the people that are supporting the truckers. A lot of those people left, of course, because for the most part there's a rhythm around the weekend and then the week, and people have to return to where they were and or work. So Sunday night was a big change, and the language changed. So at the beginning, it was called.
Mike, excuse me. I don't want to be disrespectful, but let me interrupt you there because I actually do have a lot of sources prepared, as I told you in our brief talk before the show, and let me just bring those in so that people can have some type of insight. In this particular case, since you're already pivoting into Sunday, we have a news report from Saturday which speaks a little bit to what has transpired on the streets of Ottawa from a German basically newscaster, and maybe let's show this to people first and then talk about whether you feel that what they've shown, which I'll loosely translate to you then, basically aligns with what you have seen on the ground there. Alright? So, liebe Leute, wir schauen uns jetzt mal die Nachricht aus der Tagesschau an diesbezüglich. Michael hat schon gesagt, es gab einen großen, sag ich mal, nicht unbedingt Bruch, aber doch eine Zäsur, ja, die eben über das Wochenende gekommen ist, und die Tagesschau selbst, nachdem sie lange Zeit eigentlich nur Stillschweigen bewahrt hat über dieses riesengroße Event, muss man sich mal vorstellen, wahrscheinlich so 50.000 Trucks, die aus dem ganzen Land in eine Stadt gefahren sind, haben die größtenteils einfach zuerst ein paar Dutzend, dann ein paar hundert, dann vielleicht 1000, ja, entsprechend Fahrzeugen runterstilisiert. Aber diesen Samstag konnten sie nicht anders, aus ganz klarem Grund, und diesen Grund, den möchte ich hier mal den Tagesschausprecher zusammenfassen lassen. So we'll look into this report right now. Mike.
Seit Tagen schon protestieren tausende Menschen am kanadischen Regierungssitz in Ottawa gegen die Corona-Maßnahmen. Mit Lastwagen und Traktoren blockieren sie die Innenstadt. Der Polizeichef spricht von einer Belagerung. Nun hat der Bürgermeister von Ottawa den Notstand ausgerufen. Die Sicherheit der Anwohner sei nämlich in Gefahr, so begründete er seine Entscheidung. Die Regierung müsse der Stadt nun helfen.
Die Lage in der kanadischen Hauptstadt Ottawa sei völlig außer Kontrolle, wie der Bürgermeister Jim Watson am Sonntag sagte. Die Polizei befände sich in der Unterzahl. Einige hundert Polizisten stünden Tausenden von Demonstranten gegenüber, so Watson. Deshalb müsse er nun den Notstand ausrufen. Wir erleben einen schweren Notfall, den schwersten Notfall, den unsere Stadt jemals erlebt hat. Wir müssen unbürokratischer helfen, um der Polizei mehr Verstärkung zur Verfügung zu stellen. Seit mehr als einer Woche protestieren Lkw-Fahrer in Ottawa, derzeit etwa 5000. Dort waren sie am Ende eines 4400 Kilometer langen Demozugs durchs ganze Land angekommen. Richtete sich ihr Widerstand anfangs noch gegen die Impfpflicht für Pendler an der Grenze zwischen den USA und Kanada, wenden sie sich mittlerweile allgemein gegen die Corona-Maßnahmen. Wir sollten alle freie Menschen sein. Ich will nicht in einem kommunistischen Land leben. Die Menschen sollten ihre eigene Entscheidung treffen dürfen, ob sie sich impfen lassen oder nicht, und nicht ihre Arbeit, ihr Haus oder ihr Einkommen nur wegen der Impfung verlieren. Inzwischen bekommen die Demonstranten auch Unterstützung von Republikanern aus den USA. In Kanada selbst hält die Mehrheit der Menschen die Corona-Maßnahmen ihrer Regierung für angemessen. Und 77% der Kanadier sind vollständig geimpft.
So, I suppose maybe let me ask you first about this very bizarre scene to me, dear Michael. Have you seen any counter-protest? What they show here, this crowd of people, you know, proudly displaying their signs saying triple vaxxed and grateful, we support science and health, not hate, and all the stuff that they're carrying there. Have you actually seen this? Or is this maybe some archive footage that they, you know, unearthed from, I don't know, months before, from something completely out of context?
That feels That feels impossible. There was no counter protest during the week or on the weekend. That would have been impossible. I don't know where that photo is from, but I think if you trace the source for that photo, you would find there's something odd about that. I was there for the whole week. There was no counter protest, and that scene there doesn't make any sense in the context of what we're talking about from my perspective.
All right. Now, obviously, we have to caveat this a little bit. You left Ottawa, as you said, on Saturday or Sunday, right? So it's not impossible, right, that this is some footage. Obviously, I also presume Ottawa is quite a large city, right, that you couldn't have been at every district at the same time,
Absolutely.
Right? But from what you have heard, you've never heard anybody speak, to that effect, that there's been some counter-protest somewhere, that there's been clashes, and that there's been any type of the rhetoric that they had on their signs on display publicly in Ottawa. So much we can at least say from what you have heard, correct?
I can say that there's never been a clash. I can say that with all kinds of authority. There are, as you know, everybody on the street has a camera. All of this, any clash would have been reported by multiple people. Part of what is going on in Ottawa is that it's 100% unified and 100% peaceful, and it's a dedicated group of people who have a moral code that is absolutely unbreakable.
All right, and it's actually attracted more and more people, right? What we've seen over the weekend is basically more people filing in, and what started as a trucker protest, basically on wheels, now is coming in on hoofs, I believe is the word in English. So there is another convoy that has started that has come, I presume, has come to Ottawa. Now, I don't know where you park horses in the midst of a modern, city in the 21st century, but it's quite a large number, as we've seen here, right? Flocking towards Ottawa. So what can you tell us about those? I don't know. I'm hesitant to call them cowboys. Let's just say riders, freedom riders, I believe they call themselves, who did they make their way into Ottawa? Were they stopped by, I don't know, PETA or some other, animal health organization before they arrived at their destination? Or are they actually now amidst the trucks? If so, where do you house a horse in the wintertime openly? So what can you tell us about those freedom riders, Mike?
So the first thing, just to clarify, I have seen horses. I have seen horses in Ottawa. What you're looking at is not Ottawa.
Yeah.
What you're looking at here is a very small town called Coutts, Coutts.
Right.
You're looking at the border. You're looking at the border between Canada and the US.
All right. But Mike, even this in the background, obviously I'm not local, right? But is this Ottawa?
That looks like Ottawa, but the main scene there with all of the horses, with the large group of horses, is at the border crossing between Alberta and Montana. And if you find some footage of that, there are thousands of trucks and horses and cars and people at the border between Alberta and Montana. And as of last night, there is now a blockade. There's a convoy at the US border between Detroit and Windsor. And that is probably the most significant border crossing for the two countries, the US and Canada. So it just continues to escalate. So Ottawa is kind of the epicenter of the convoy for freedom, but there's convoys all over the place. There's convoys that couldn't get into Ottawa. They went back to Quebec City. So there's a big convoy in Quebec City. Quebec City is the government center for the province of Quebec. There have been demonstrations all across the country to support the truckers in every major city. So I completely support this. We remain strong and we are growing, and I don't think it can be beaten at this point.
All right, so you're getting a little bit ahead of yourself. I wanted to get into the meta-analysis a little later. But yeah, thank you for clarifying that rightfully, right? This scene probably stems from, you know, some location far away from Ottawa. Yeah, but nonetheless, I just wanted to point out that, it doesn't have to be true, right? But people write underneath this video, which has almost 500,000 views, which is quite considerable, protesters arriving in Ottawa on horseback. Now, they do show different scenes, and I do think that if they had arrived in such large numbers in Ottawa, somehow or another, I feel, you know, video clips of that would have made, you know, sort of like their way onto the internet. I garner from that probably they didn't quite make it there, but nonetheless, knowing that there's a large horde of horses or horsemen, you know, basically just roaming around Canada, kind of puts a smile on my face. This is also some type of probably never seen before protest. All right, now let's go into what else has transpired. So there have been a couple of bizarre scenes where basically we've heard from police first coming in at night, as you can see there, and then basically raid at the truckers' base camp, stealing the truckers' fuel, right? So this looked a little bit like that. Basically, people started talking to them, you know, putting them on the spot, but that didn't stop them from, you know, picking up all of the canisters and whatever else they had, you know, their fuel in, pretty much on the spot, and I don't know, hauling it somewhere. But the funny thing is, wait, that's a different scene. They seem to have brought it all back, right? Because immediately the following day, there's been these scenes passing around, or have been passed around, where basically people ecstatically, you know, chant, "It's all there, it's all there." They gave it back to us. So just maybe listen in to what this one person has to say.
Look at this. Look at this. And these have all been refilled a couple times today.
So there's also, I just want to mention this before I ask you about your opinion on this and basically meta-analysis about this very bizarre episode. But just to add on top, you know, there's been people who apparently have, I don't know, either anticipated this or in a very brief time found a way around it. Because pretty much from what I understand, right, everybody on the street who appeared to be carrying any type of container that could have contained fuel has been stopped and searched, and, you know, I don't know, probably the fuel has been confiscated off them. And so people, in order to sort of block this, you know, this method from the police, started all randomly carrying around jerry cans around the city of Ottawa, making it impossible to distinguish between who was actually carrying fuel and who was actually just fooling the police. And if you feel that this is too good to be true, check this out. I mean, I have not doctored this footage. It's from Rebel News. It's very entertaining, I have to say. But check this out first. So there you go. You see these people, and you can tell. I mean, actually, you can tell that they're probably empty there, but then again, what do? Do you stop everybody with such a canister, with such a container? It's to me, this is just hilarious. All right, so what do you make of this entire episode? You know, the police coming in first, stealing the fuel, which on Friday we've heard it takes about $7,000 worth of fuel to keep the trucks idling every single day. Right, because obviously those truckers need to have an opportunity to stay warm, even if it's just within, you know, their own cabins, and then basically bringing the entire fuel back, and then also the population hitting back at the police in this, well, I have to say, entertaining fashion. So what do you make of all of this?
So one of the things that I alluded to before was that on Sunday night, a state of emergency was declared in Ottawa. So that was the first change, and the first action based on the state of emergency was the seizure of fuel, and so the reaction, and I think it's, you know, I think you've talked about it. I think it's very clever, very creative that by the next day, the people that were still in Ottawa supporting the truckers, everybody had these jerry cans. And it's a wonderful strategy in the way that you've talked about, to deflect from what the police were doing. And there has been a rumor that the fuel has been given back. I can't confirm that. I can confirm that the rhetoric is escalating. So on Sunday night, it was called a state of emergency. And on Monday night, they were using the word insurrection, was used for the first time. And we can talk about, if you would like, whenever, the projection now of what that means and where this is possibly going at this moment.
I want to hold off on that for a second, because I still want to go through, the multitude of other sources I still have, laid out here before me, because I feel it'll paint a more bizarre but also a more complete picture, because it will put, or actually, how do you say this? It'll bring out, right? It'll bring to the forefront the contrasts, which couldn't be any starker, right? Between what is largely and possibly the biggest peaceful protest since Gandhi, right? And the way it's being portrayed in the media. So to further underline that point, there's been a press conference, and they're alluding to a little bit of what you said before. They are reacting. I take it this is partly or mainly or all of them, the organizers who have spoken out publicly about what next steps they are all trying to sort of, anticipate or undertake. And they launched a preemptive SOS, I want to say. And if you don't believe me, then listen in on that, because this person, particularly this gentleman right next to me, whom I don't know who he is particularly. I think he introduced himself, but he's not known to me yet. At this point, somewhat of an unofficial, maybe spokesperson, he basically introduces the situation and lays out the foundation for what we have to talk about with Michael. Just maybe listen in for like a minute, and you'll get the gist of it.
Good evening from around the world, around Ontario and around Canada. Thanks for tuning in tonight. The title of this broadcast, for many of you logging in tonight, may be called a preemptive SOS. As you may have seen on some other social media influencers out there have been a lot of rumors going around about very increased police presence around the National Capital Region commencing this week. Although we have confirmation they're not here yet, to our knowledge, we believe, given the number of different sources that have been telling us that there will be a very heightened or increased police presence in Ottawa, we believe it's a credible enough issue that we wanted to do this broadcast. And while it is not time for alarm, it is time to, if you want to support us, if you really want to help out, what I'd like you to do is start thinking about coming to Ottawa. I don't want you to get in your car tonight. I don't want you to start packing tonight, but I want you to start preparing your families or talking to your employers and saying, listen, I really feel that my place is in Ottawa this week.
All right, so he goes on explaining further why he feels this is a conflict that's worthy of everybody's time, right? But it paints the picture that you started painting, where basically the state of emergency that's been declared led to now extreme measures being undertaken from the government side that are completely disproportionate, at least from my view. When you look into what these people are actually doing, I mean, like, they're even refraining from honking now, from what I understand, right? And it's even worse. I mean, he mentioned the up to 3,500 maybe riot police arriving in the coming, I don't know, hours, maybe days, we never know. But another rumor has reached me, which I feel like I must include into basically, this report in order to show people how crazy the situation in Ottawa got right now. Let me show you this right now, and check this out. It's basically from the same person. I think it's the same person. I hope I'm not doing any miscredit here, but I believe this is the same person, and he's basically reporting from his own channel on YouTube, where I grabbed this from, and it's from the same day. It's probably been posted maybe some hours after this joint press conference, but listen in on what he has to say.
Hey everybody, live from Ottawa here. So we're just going to do a little update tonight as I walk, all baby-faced. Okay, last night our sources were pretty clear. We knew something was happening, and it happened at Coventry, okay? the snipers on the roof, blah, blah, blah. So here's the stories we're hearing tonight. We can't confirm them, but we just need to make sure everybody knows this. The rumors are that riot police are on their way to Ottawa right now. Riot police, okay? The numbers could range anywhere from 1,800 to 3,000. We've heard different numbers. We've heard different stories. There's a lot of bullshit out there. I want to put this call out to everybody right now. If we go dark in Ottawa, if we go dark meaning no more social media posts go out, that means their operation is being deployed, okay? That means they cut all our cell service, our internet, our blah blah blah. We have no communication to the out. They start the kettle operation where they come around in full tactical gear and SWAT. They apparently have places now where they're going to start processing all us terrorists or criminals or whatever. Even though it's been the world's, you know, largest peaceful gathering, there has been absolutely no violence. We have the government on their head right now. They're trying to find some way to demonize us. They can't.
All right, he basically just glanced over it for a second, but if I understand him correctly, and there's been a couple of people who have confirmed to me this, is there's snipers that have been actually put into position at, you know, various locations throughout Ottawa, which they wouldn't do if they thought that this was a peaceful protest that doesn't need, you know, sniper suppressive fire. Now, I don't know how to even begin to wrap this into a question, Mike, but how do you feel, I suppose, about, you know, snipers on the roofs of one of the major cities in Canada? Has there ever been a moment that you can recall where this was warranted?
So the state of emergency in Ottawa is not a national state of emergency. There's been 2 states of emergency in Canada in its history. Both in my lifetime. So I've seen the snipers in Ottawa. Part of this is gesturing. You can imagine that you can imagine 500,000 people celebrating freedom, knowing that there's snipers on the Parliament buildings at the same time. So this was happening last week, and you know, honestly, this is gesturing on the part of the government. There is absolutely zero violence and zero tolerance for violence in this group. But I think the last clip that you presented is very important as an indication of where this is likely headed. So the fact that there's going to be an escalation, and that riot police are by definition are brought in to conduct a violent agenda, and the interesting part, or the important part of one of the important parts of what he is talking about, is that they may cut off communication, and that will now be the call to come.
I mean, obviously they don't want the world looking in, and normally when you don't want the world to see whatever it is you're doing, right, you're either doing very private things or very nasty things, or both at once, and I don't know which one would be worse for Canada and the world, but it's not like, you know, they have not already basically soiled the
what are you doing?
The how do you say this, the collective you know, reputation of police, at least in Canada, and I want to say Ottawa, by displaying these types of acts publicly. But I'm just showing this because if you feel appalled by what you've seen there, which has been captured by, I suppose, maybe a reporter from Rebel News, I'm not sure, Ezra Levant reported on this. But if you're appalled by these scenes, just imagine what they will do once communication goes dark. So they're willing to have this out there, right? Just some random police guy pulling off an elder person off the streets for, I mean, what infringement, what violation could have possibly warranted this type of approach, right? To just a senior citizen of Canada. It's disgusting, it's reprehensible, it's disrespectful. But then just imagine what they will, unfortunately, most likely do once it all goes dark. So I don't want to speculate there, but let me put this question to you this way. Has there been any large-scale protest in Canada over the past 20 months related to anti-mandate, you know, anti-mandate movements? or groups that have been suppressed with violence in Canada that you can think of?
So Canada on the protest stage, on the global protest stage, up until now, if you're pro protesting, was an embarrassment, was a global embarrassment, and many of us couldn't figure out what was the issue. Why, when there was call for global protests all over the world, big monstrous gatherings of people, Canada was quite quiet, and this has changed everything. Something has happened in this country, and there is absolutely no going back at this point. It needs to be underlined just what a significant moment this is, and I hope that your listeners and people all over the world realize this is a very significant moment in the global narrative, and we need to talk about how to hold this between us and do everything that we can to work through this moment. This is a big deal for the government. The government of Canada has basically said that they will not negotiate, that they will not meet with anybody that's connected to any of this. It's obvious now that what the truckers and supporters, and I should say, just so that people know, so before the truckers arrived, 40% of Canada in a poll were in favor of the complete lifting of restrictions. Within a week of the truckers being in Ottawa, the number has gone to 54%, and that was a poll done by a mainstream media channel, and they're not likely to do that again because I think they were surprised at the numbers. So it's important to say that more than half of this country wants complete withdrawal of restrictions around this pandemic. So this is a wake-up call for the politicians, because this is a hill that people are going to die on, and so be it. It's really, really significant. It's as significant as you can possibly make this moment in history.
I suppose what you only touched on or avoided quite elegantly is confirming what we've all, I don't want to say feared, but what we sort of, gathered if we've been paying attention, which is, as you put it mildly, right? Canada has not been at the forefront of protests so far. I just want to bring it back to my previous point without taking away from anything you said, because this is absolutely true. But again, you're already into the meta-analysis of things, is if Ottawa happens to go dark, which is the main takeaway point, right, that I want to refer to people right now, right? The acts of cruelty and ruthlessness that will probably most likely follow, right, are, I don't want to say unimaginable, because here in Europe, specifically in Germany, specifically with Berlin police, we've seen those, right? But unfortunately, they will be very uncomfortable, right? And it'll be like a breaking point maybe for some, particularly because Canadians, right, have the reputation of being such Gentile people, right? So friendly to each other, right? Never like a bad word, and certainly never violence on the street. And I remember seeing like some documentary from, I believe it was Michael Moore, right, ways back, where he was basically actually checking, on people's doors, right, going from home to home, checking that Canadians, felt so safe and there was so little violence and crime, right, that they left their doors unlocked everywhere, right? Unimaginable things if you live, I want to say, like in the city center of Berlin or something like that. This all to say that if it should happen, right, what those people in the streets fear, that unfortunately this riot police is not just there to drink some tea, right, and communications do break down. Unfortunately, prepare yourselves for the worst, and also assume the worst, because they will not move an entire military division or riot police division there from the entire country into just one spot with snipers on the roof to just, like a glance from afar. it'll be unfortunately very ugly, and people need to prepare themselves for that, right? Mentally, physically, with, I don't know, provisions. I don't want to say weaponry because it's meant to be a completely peaceful protest, right? But you do have the right to self-defense, dear Canadians, if you're watching right now. And feel free to check out our streams from, you know, August last year, the year before that, and just check out Berlin Police, right? And that was just, that wasn't even riot police. That was just regular, well, how do you call them? State troopers, I suppose, would be an equivalent, right? It's ugly, and it's, I mean, hopefully it won't be deadly, although some protesters have died on the German side of things, at least, right? I would never wish this upon anybody, right, to lose a family member in this fight, but I want to say you guys came there, right, to last. You said you were going to make it last, and it's starting to, you know, sound like it might get uncomfortable now, so please prepare yourselves for that, right? Hope for the best, but assume the worst, unfortunately. All right, nonetheless, monologue finished. You're absolutely right in saying that it means great things for the world if Canada succeeds, because there's never been a movement, you know, of this sort, at least on this scale, in the world. Another key player in this, obviously, is the media. Right. So what can you tell us, Mike, about how media and public reaction is being managed throughout this crisis in Canada?
So media in mainstream media in Canada is maybe led by our national broadcaster, which is the CBC, Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, and they receive $1.3 billion a year from the government. Maybe not everybody will like what I say, but the CBC is a complete is completely infiltrated now with lies and propaganda. Any statement on what's going on in Canada or in Ottawa is a completely manufactured statement at this point, and is either propaganda or a complete and absolute lie. Goes on every day. It's gone on like this for every hour on the hour for 2 years. There's only one major story in Canada. Maybe there's only one major story in many countries over the last 2 years, but it's completely unreliable. They're not the only ones. Any mainstream media outlet now in Canada is completely bought and sold, and is in lockstep with each other, and they tell the same story and their own. I mean, we all, you know, anybody who does research on media, we know what the global ownership of media is about, and it's been a really pivotal part of this last 2 years to have the ability to create a narrative across the world, which is completely false, and that's what we're looking at. But we will win regardless, because because we've known this. The people that are connected to this, the beauty of this is that every single person that comes to Ottawa sees the truth. They see their own truth by being in the streets, and as soon as you come, you know that something is wrong, because there is zero truth about what is being said about the people that are there. You have never seen. It's the love on the street is thick. It's an unbelievable scene.
Yeah, and if people do want to judge for themselves, there's various live streams still going out from Ottawa, which is basically a good sign, because as long as they're coming out and everything seems silent and peaceful there, that means they haven't moved against the protesters so far, and there's some sort of, you know, civility between both sides. All right, thank you very much for your assessment there. I just want to mention to people that if you are English speaking and you happen to be looking for more information, reliable information, they tell me, right, about what's happening in Canada, people tell me that a good place to start looking is Druthers News, right? Maybe I'll just share the link with everybody. People tell me that this is a great place to start basically informing yourselves. And I just want to mention them, not just purely to promote them, but also to highlight another, I want to say, endeavor of theirs, which I find very interesting. We've all witnessed addressed as GoFundMe has basically blocked the funds, the over 10 million Canadian dollars that were meant to go aid the undertaking of the truckers. And now there's this new campaign that has sprung up, which at the moment right now has, amassed 136,000 from, their goal, which is 150,000, which they put there this low deliberately in order to be able to just, stem the logistics. But the same outlet, Druthers, here apparently, brought to life this new campaign, which is going splendidly, where apparently right now people can hire a trucker, which is interesting because from what I understand, this will be like, and maybe I'm reading this wrong, maybe you know more about this, Mike, than you can weigh in on this, but from what I understood is that this will be basically like an incentive, maybe even like some type of, I don't know, like job offer to truckers to actually do bring, at least a truck or maybe, even filled with some load, some goods, some provisions to Ottawa. And they want to take that money and basically make it lucrative for even more truckers to come in, or at least to, welcome them with a little gift, monetary gift to, I don't know, help them settle in, whilst everybody obviously know that this was just, like how do you say this? It's nothing compared to what it'll actually cost, right, to stay there, right? It's basically just a symbolic gesture, but nonetheless, people can now apparently adopt or hire a trucker, right, to incentivize people to come there. Am I reading this right? Did you hear about this campaign, Mike? Is this what's happening there? Because people just throw this information at me, and maybe I'm reading this wrong.
It's not totally clear to me. It sounds like a bit of a crossover. There, all through this, there's a thing called Adopt a Trucker. Mm-hmm. So I can talk about that a little bit. So every single trucker who is interested has a family in Ottawa that is responsible for them, and that so they can go to that family, they can have showers. They can eat there, they can rest there, whatever. There are more Adopt a Trucker families in Ottawa than there are requests, in the same way that there's more food in Ottawa than anybody could possibly eat. And just talking about the donation thing, I want people to know that that $10 million of GoFundMe is 120,000 individual donors. So if you want to make people angry, that's a pretty good way to start. So this is what we're dealing with. These people that are connected to this, they will not be denied. They will not be deterred. Every day now will be a significant day here. There will be no days where something significant has not happened here. And people will react to whatever is thrown at them, including a request to come and blanket Ottawa with bodies, if that's what is asked.
All right. Maybe before we get to this, there's another thing that we kind of touched on, but then, left in the dust because there's so much information coming in. We touched on this briefly, which is basically that some border crossing right now seem to, be either completely blocked or are about to fill up. There's a news report on this, and maybe let's listen in on this and then, take this apart.
The Canadian Freedom Convoy protests have made their way to our backyard. Windsor, Ontario was in their sights, and the Ambassador Bridge was their target. The backups on 75 to the Ambassador Bridge started around about 3 o'clock this afternoon, and as day turns to night, the situation hasn't changed any. Thousands of truckers now stranded on Detroit roads with nowhere to go.
We got to grin and bear it, right? There's just... Can't get upset. I'm not the only guy stuck out here, but fortunately I do have a sleeper cab, and I feel for many of these drivers that don't have that option.
From Sky 4, you could see the protesters on the Canadian side in downtown Windsor blocking the road and essentially shutting down the busiest border crossing in North America. And with the bridge shut down, the backup started piling up here along 75 and the service drive. In this rig, Nave's carrying a load of breakfast cereal destined for Toronto.
It doesn't make sense to disturb the rest of the public, right? So they shouldn't be blocking the borders, or they shouldn't be blocking the roads.
I'm triple vaccinated, I'm pro-vaccine, but I'm anti-mandate. It's time that the mandates were over. It's time that people could travel freely across the border, both sides.
Talking of traveling freely along Fort Street, this driver coming the wrong way down the road, trying to get around all the backed up trucks. but unfortunately for her, a police officer was coming the opposite direction. While these two spent some time figuring this one out, these truckers, well, they have time limits, and the clock is ticking.
14 hours on the clock we're allowed.
And where are you now?
Oh, I'm around 13.
So Ron here's going to spend the night at the local gas station parking lot. Take a look at the time lapse. The trucks on top, they're crossing the bridge. Well, they're meant to be. They're not going anywhere.
You know, I can understand people fighting for certain rights, but the way they're going about it, doing this is not going to solve anything.
Along the border tonight, with the night camp, Tim Pamplin.
All right, so this is a completely different issue there, but I just want to mention that there's also another convoy starting up without getting into this conversation right now, dear Mike. But I hear, for example, New Zealand is gearing up to basically also put trucks on the street, and there's people who are eyeing this somewhat critically because they're saying, you know, there's actually already food shortages going on there, and there's like supply chains that are being, you know, like disrupted through all of this. Seeing now that one of the major crossings to the US is impacted in this fashion, does that make you worry that, you know, shortages of any kind may happen in the near or distant future in Canada?
I think I want to emphasize that many of us know that there's a narrative that is targeting New Zealand, Australia, Canada, the US, and Europe, that most leaders are following lockstep. And that this is probably the most significant moment for all of those regions. This will determine what life looks like in the future. It's that big a deal. So Canada is simply responding in a way that is attracting a lot of attention. But those countries I've mentioned are all part of the same plan, and it behooves all of us to coordinate this and recognize and see each other. And will there be shortages? Will there be discomfort? Will people experience stress and anxiety? Absolutely. There is no way that we can turn this, that we can stop this without there being discomfort. And it's going to get more uncomfortable. There is no way this is not going to get more uncomfortable. This is a life and death issue for the governments of the countries I mentioned. They cannot peacefully give into this. It's too big a plan. So be it. That's what we're looking at. And we all need to see each one of us, each country, as participating in this collectively, for the sake of our collective futures.
Well, you seem to be very resolved, right? You seem to have a lot of vigor in you, and you seem to be ready to tackle this head on. But what about, you know, the rest of the population? I mean, you avoided to talk numbers in the beginning, but there's varying reports. Some people say it's only 5,000 people in Ottawa. Some say it's 50,000 that came into Ottawa. Then I wonder where the missing 45K would be. Then people tell me that they flock in and out depending on, you know, like the weekdays. But what I'm heading towards is there support within the general population? Because they will, I don't know how related they are to this issue, whether they're on the edge of their seats as we are watching this, you know, hoping for things to go well, or whether they are regarding this as some type of annoyance or maybe a nuisance or what have you, right? Because some people complained about the honking, right? And promptly it was basically, you know, forbidden by some judge there, right? So I suppose my question is, do you feel like you have the support in your guys' back, like from the people, or will all of this crumble as soon as the first, you know, shortage arrives? If you had to speculate, what do you think?
So, I mean, obviously, it's a matter of personal opinion. I think Canada is capable of achieving this goal. And this goal is as I said, is the most significant moment in a very, very, very long time, and will determine the future of all of our countries. because it's that big a piece. This some of us believe and have always believed that this pandemic does not end unless we end it. There is no plan to end this. There is a plan that many of us are aware of. It's written in plain sight, and more and more people are aware of it. I think that as I said before, 54% of this country in a mainstream media poll want full restrictions lifted. I think, one of the advantages or disadvantages of Canada, of course, it's 5,000 kilometers wide. So we're very spread out. I think I think we're too big to fail at this moment.
All right. Okay, because we're in too deep at this point. You feel like the investment has been made. The truckers are there, they're on the spot, and when they say that they're in it and they're in it to win it, and they'll stay until the bitter end, you feel that this isn't just rhetoric, this isn't just propaganda. No. From our side, this is basically people demanding their rights until
there
the
are
bitter
truckers.
end.
There are truckers saying that they will die there if need be.
All right. Well, I hope it won't come to that, but it's certainly great to know that they have the resolve, and they understand what's on the line.
Absolutely united, absolutely committed, absolutely unified, 100%.
All right, now let's talk about a group of people who are never unified and never committed and largely only run their mouth without ever being productive. Of course, I'm talking about politicians. Politicians in your country seem to have supported, the course that brought us all here, basically the course of an ongoing and never-ending pandemic. But now it seems like, and maybe you'll be able to speak to that, whether this is just, like an isolated incident or something that's developing. There seems to be, at least some political figures, right, who are speaking out about, the portrayal of the protests in the media and what they have witnessed themselves. So they're maybe for the first time speaking out and basically challenging the narrative. And maybe just to bring you one example, this person is Joe Lightbound. They tell me he's a Liberal MP. I don't know much else about him, but maybe just listen to his words. And the question I suppose to you, dear Mike, after that will be: do you sense that there's some change, being signaled, at least in rhetoric, from the politicians who are usually so late to the party?
Seen on Radio Canada an interview with what seemed to be a very kind grandmother who demonstrated for her grandkids. She looked and sounded nothing like a white supremacist, nor did the Black, Sikh, and Indigenous Canadians I saw demonstrating on my way to Parliament these last 2 weeks, or in Quebec City this last Saturday. I have enough respect for my fellow Canadians not to engage in these easy and absurd labels. Now, looking beyond the demonstrations, I've heard from hundreds of constituents and citizens who took the time to reach out to me these past weeks. Folks who have nothing to do with these demonstrations, who are for the most part vaccinated, who have done everything as they should these last 2 years. People who have shared with me legitimate concerns about where we are heading collectively. I think we must hear these concerns, and I think we must respond to them.
What do you make of this? Are politicians coming around on this issue? Is Trudeau's ship sinking, or is this just, a wave of verbal sympathy which will never turn into any practical action?
So on a certain level, I mean, it's on a certain level, everybody is aware of Trudeau and the fact that he disappeared, and that he's maybe back. And I would say we're at a moment of government dysfunction in this country. I think so. Trudeau, as the leader of the party that gentleman is part of, has never wavered once in his depiction of this being a bunch of low-life criminals that are basically, despite the fact that every single person who comes sees something completely different. The leader of the opposition, the second most popular party, populist party in Canada has lost his job and has been replaced during this time, during like a couple of days ago, and has been replaced with an interim leader who is doing all the right gesturing around playing the pro trucker card, which leads to a very ambitious man in that party who is making videos about that he wants to be prime minister, that he is. And I have a video of him saying that he was against these kinds of incidents on film. So I think there is no, I don't see personally a government solution to this. I think it's a black and white issue. I think that if people are, supporting the truckers and they're in the government, I think that if the swing to public support grows, the first job of a politician is to stay in power, and they will alter their stance based on public opinion. Do I think that the government is going to be is going to be helpful in this? Absolutely not. I think that these governments, the countries that I mentioned, are all in lockstep to a plan that is bigger than each individual country, and that I'm not sure who that is personally, which is that's neither here nor there. Okay. I don't think that the government can let this happen. I think the government is so committed to this global plan that they cannot acquiesce to these demands. I think it's that simple. And so, without saying what I think will happen, I think it's going to be very significant what is going to happen.
All right, so thank you for that. Maybe staying on the topic before we get into what we believe probably this all will lead to. If we say, or if you say that there's no hope, lost on the politicians, and is there any hope that maybe police, the executive force, who are the poor suckers who need to then start bashing in heads or what have you, right? That they may change their opinion, because I don't want to play this entire video. It's 10 minutes long, but there's a Corporal Balford, they tell me, and the video that's going around displaying him here, says that he supposedly resigned from the Trudeau administration. What's more interesting to know is you said this, I believe, Mike, excuse me, that he is. How do you call them? Royal Police, RPMC, or what you call them?
So RCMP, Royal Canadian Mounted Police. Yeah. Yeah,
there you go. So people tell me that, or this video, which has even been, it must be of some significance, because ihr seht das auf Deutsch, ne? Dieses Video wurde sogar auf Deutsch übersetzt, right? So it has even been translated into German. It's going around. It has amassed, multiple tens of thousands of views. It tells me that, this person apparently laid down his job, to no longer be part of this machine that is, fighting against its own citizens. But do you think this is an isolated incident? Same question as before with the politicians, or do you feel that police is going to stand by their, bread givers, basically the people who pay their rents, their mortgages, and employ them, or do you feel that, those people, police, meaning police, but all executive forces in that sense, will maybe also, come over to our side?
So let's differentiate between the police and the military. The military, it's fairly well known, I believe, that the military will not support the government, and that the government would know that at this point.
Wait, hang on, but this is quite the announcement. First of all, it's not known on German side of things. We here don't know that at all. But second of all, what makes you come to this, assumption? Why would the military not support the government when push comes to shove?
All right. So keep in mind, this is not confirmed. I know. So there's a large number of military. There's a large number of former military people in Canada who have served recently in the last decade, who are, as far as I know, completely united in their support for the truckers. And they tell us that the military will not respond to a call to go against the truckers. Now, when they bring in riot police, that's police. And keep in mind, this is just my opinion. I'm not connected to any of these organizations. But for this to work, for this to win, all over the world, there needs to be defections of authority groups. And there are people who are, we're all aware that tactic of making people see their humanity and to choose the side of freedom, that is an ongoing kind of almost a psychological battle at this point. So it's not unimaginable that there would be a defection should this escalate, where people would not respond to orders that involved violence against what is essentially the most peaceful protest in Canadian history.
But it's not been painted as such. I mean, you guys have been painted as extremists. You guys have been painted as anti-vax. I mean, it even goes so far as I've had this on the program on Friday. I can't, show you right now, but somebody just painted the word freedom on some, wall in Ottawa, I believe, graffiti. And I believe the kids call it tagged it these days, but either way. So just the word freedom, and then some mainstream outlet, picked up this incident and said, the anti-vaxxers are, just out of control, and just for the word freedom alone. So what I'm getting at is that they're so misinformed, right? 77%, they say, at least in Germany here, they say 77% of Canadians are vaccinated at least once, I imagine, right? Then there's some that are double vaccinated, some even took the booster, but 100% of them are watching mainstream media. Some additionally also consume alternative media, right? But nonetheless, they all have this somewhere in the backs of their heads. So what I'm getting at is it's sort of like stacked against you, the situation, right? It seems to me that if you were to go just by what we believe must be in people's heads, it must be largely fueled by this anti-vax rhetoric, or basically anti-vaxxers, right, rhetoric, where the government is doing their best at painting you guys, in a very bad color, right? So you seem, again, you have a lot of resolve, and obviously it's your job, right, to sort of, give hope to people. But realistically speaking, right, do you feel that, and I asked you this before, right, do you feel like you have this support from the general population when push comes to shove?
Yes. So let me be very clear that vaccination status never, ever comes up in this protest. There are vaccinated truckers, there are unvaccinated truckers, there are vaccinated protesters. It has nothing to do with this. Everybody, it's about freedom, and everybody is more than welcome to do whatever they would like. It's about pro-choice. So there is no debate, zero debate about vaccination ever on the street or in any, and if you hear that there is on mainstream media, it's a lie. So there's both sides represented in this. It's well documented. There are, I'm not going to say there's as many unvaccinated truckers as there are vaccinated, but there are significant numbers, but we don't talk about it because that's not the issue. And of course, the mainstream media would love that to be the issue because what they're all about is division. So the idea of unity terrifies them. And I gave a short answer to your question, which is yes, I hold to that. I absolutely, fundamentally believe that we will win this and that there's support and that the country is behind this and it will only grow, and that there's no strategy that the government can use that will win over the hearts and minds of Canadians at this point.
Because basically it's past the point of no return. They've lost them. And we all know
it's past the point of no return. The truckers have always said since the beginning, we do not go home until we win this, until all restrictions are lifted. All restrictions, all of them.
All right. Well, there's certainly some indicators that are trying to basically support your claims that this thing is rolling and will not stop anymore. And this is just one of those examples that I could have shown, right? They tell me that from every region in Canada, this being the example from New Brunswick, right? There's even more convoys either starting up or are thinking about, you know, coming to Ottawa, or maybe, you know, even to drive out to different cities. I now heard as well that there's protesters either gathering or starting to think about gathering in places like Ontario and Toronto, right? So it seems to be spreading. Can you talk a little bit about this before we reach across the border and look into all the other countries where this is, you know, picking up speed now as well? Do you feel like this model of occupying, I want to say, right, to a certain degree, capital buildings, right, buildings of authority, right, government buildings, do you feel that this is going to spread to other cities? And if so, what do you think, you know, the next Ottawa will be? Will it be Ontario? Will it be Toronto? Will it be maybe even on the West Coast? I mean, you alluded to this yourself, right? Canada is a huge country, right? Where are the key points where you feel, you know, next something probably is likely to spring up, you know, happen?
You know, one of the disadvantages at this point with being in this country is, of course, it's immense size. So I alluded to that. It's 5,000 kilometers across. So to be strategic in Canada requires that you find points of concentration. Otherwise, it's just too large a country to be doing this. So I think it's happening organically. I think there's 3 border crossings across the country. There's major cities. I don't think the idea would be to kind of shut down one city after another. I think there's a symbolism about Ottawa, obviously the nation's capital, and the center of our government, and the center of the place that has the capacity to lift the restrictions. So I can't say for sure. I think this is going to escalate very quickly. So I don't think we're going to do this for a long time. I think something very dramatic will probably happen this week, and because I think the longer that the truckers are there, the worse it is for the government, and they have to be seen as being effective. And the same way the mayor of Ottawa and the chief of police for Ottawa, they all talk exactly the same way as the premier of Ontario. Ottawa is in the province of Ontario. They all are in lockstep on this, and they cannot tolerate this to go on very much longer without looking to be very active. And the truckers are just being truckers. They're just, I mean, the beauty of the truckers globally is just the absolute, the size of the vehicle and the capacity for wonderful imagery around what it looks like when they're all together. And of course, the spectacular horns that they happen to come with. But I just want to talk about that. So there's a judge. There is, and you alluded to that. There's a judge in Ottawa that basically said that honking was going to be illegal for 10 days. This is farcical. This is not. And I said this on social media. Imagine trying to enforce that. Imagine how hilarious this would be to try and figure out which truck is honking. Like, how could you? Did they not?
You know what people? you know what people tell me? I mean, you're right, this is unenforceable, but people tell me in the chat, you know, we're live streaming this, so people are able to basically, you know, comment on what we're talking about. And they told me while we were watching this scene before that supposedly, allegedly, right? I don't know, I can't confirm this, but the crime of this person, right, was just that he honked his car, right? And so basically they tried to...
This man is 78 years old. And he's shorter than, look at how tall he is. He's not 5 feet tall.
Yeah.
And what I had heard is that he refused to give his identification. But either way, how ridiculous is this, and how embarrassing? And honestly, for the police, this is a horrible piece of footage. This. But to be human about this, the police cannot be having fun. Carrying out this kind of activity. Like this is not good for anybody. This isn't good. They don't want to be there. We don't want to be in a situation like that. That's not good for anybody. So we're still, you know, up until now, I mean, that footage up until now, except for that footage, we'd wander around in Ottawa and you know, greet the police and say hello and high five, and every single interview on tape of somebody asking a police officer in their car would say things have been unbelievably positive. So that's what we're... Yeah.
It's so you're saying it's actually still quiet, and even those scenes that seem to trouble us, to shock us, right? They're not actually the majority. So we're just looking at isolated incidents. The majority, the overwhelming majority even, is peaceful interactions with peaceful people who are largely on even our side. So if it were to come to some type of violent outburst, it would have to be carried out by outsiders, because from what you tell me, people based in Ottawa right now who are in this, you know, in this canyon, you know, street canyon there, as they encounter each other, they're all formidable citizens. They're basically, you know, just peaceful people coming together.
Just the same way that it would be normally. The same way it would be normally, right? The police are part of a society. In our case, in Canada, the police are part of a society. I have people in my family that are in police departments. With the riot police are the visual, that's the visuals that you see all over Europe and all over the world, where they come in and they're completely in riot gear and they're completely unrecognizable, and they look like they're coming into a war zone. That's why when they talk about, you know, 2,000 or 3,000 people coming in, they're a different group. I don't know how you become a riot police person, but you're probably not even from Ottawa, right? So the best thing would be that over the past few days you're completely separate and have no emotional connection to the Ottawa community.
That's what I was alluding to, because again, so we've seen this type of approach here on German side of things, you know, this German efficiency and stuff. So they have taken a harder approach towards protesters here earlier. Again, we don't have this predisposition of being nice to each other in Germany, as you Canadians unfortunately have the privilege of enjoying. And so they bring in the riot troops, right? And particularly, you know, the ones from Berlin. They are the nasty ones. So if you are on, let's say, you know, in the very south Bavaria of Germany, right, somewhere in Munich, where, you know, people know this spot. This is where the Oktoberfest used to happen up until 2 years ago. Nonetheless, and you're at some type of protest and you see Berlin, you know, police approaching you. I mean, I want to say, hold on to your socks, because they just might be, you know, blown off of you in the near future. All right. I found a video which is very telling, which I'm sure you must have seen circulating, and you've already heard snippets of it just, you know, a couple of seconds ago, which shows this contrast that we talked about, right? Which I'd love to have your confirmation, right, that this is actually, you know, representative of what is happening in the streets of Canada as we approach the end of this show, where we'll go into the meta-analysis of where we think this entire thing is headed. But I think the best way of basically introducing us and people to the discrepancy that probably people are feeling on the streets right now is to check out this video, which has amassed millions of views over the last couple of days on the internet. So let's check it out for people. If for whatever reason you've been living under a rock and have missed this, please, you know, keep your eyes wide open now and pay attention.
Days, Canadians were shocked and frankly disgusted by the behavior displayed by some people protesting in our nation's capital. Hate can never be the answer. I want to be very clear. We are not intimidated by those who hurl insults and abuse at small business workers and steal food from the homeless. We won't give in to those who fly racist flags. We won't cave to those who engage in vandalism or dishonor the memory of our veterans. Tous les Canadiens ont le droit d'exprimer leur opinion ou leur désaccord avec leur gouvernement, mais ils n'ont pas le droit de menacer ou de harceler leurs concitoyens ni de propager des messages de haine. There is no place in our country for threats, violence, or hatred. So to those responsible for this behavior, it needs to stop. To anyone who joined the convoy but is rightly uncomfortable with the symbols of hatred and division on display, join with your fellow Canadians. Be courageous and speak out. Do not stand for or with intolerance and hate. And to Canadians at home, watching in disgust and disbelief at this behavior, wondering how this could have happened in our nation's capital after everything we've been through, the behavior on display this weekend does not represent you. Hateful rhetoric, abuse towards their fellow citizens, there is always a right to protest peacefully that I and others will defend fully as part of this democracy. There is not a right to incite violence, perform acts of violence, or to spew hatred. And I think anyone who is part of this group who is disgusted by what their folks protesting alongside are doing needs to step up and take responsibility, condemn these actions, and look for other ways to express their displeasure. Aux expressions de haine et d'intolérance qu'on a vues parmi ces manifestants, je veux remercier.
I mean, there's many questions I could ask right now, and I have to apologize up front because I'm getting emotional at this point, you know, seeing this. I'm not even Canadian, you know, and just my heart is beating faster seeing those incredible scenes of friendship and unity and seeing this in such stark contrast with what, you know, these despicable politicians are putting out there. I suppose the only question left, you know, to ask at this point is, what the fuck do you think Trudeau is doing? I mean, how on earth does he come back from this? He seems to be so completely, like, gone off course, and deliberately so. So what in God's name, you know, can anything even bring this person back? What do you do about this guy?
I don't think he survives this, and I think that's a great video. Kudos to the person that put that together. That is dysfunction at its core. What you're looking at is a information war of a very deep, pronounced, and reckless nature. I don't think he can survive this, but this agenda is so perverse that there's going to be a reckoning. There's going to be a reckoning that comes from this, and the solution will not be another person or another political figure or another political party. This is a really significant piece, and I'm glad you shared that, because I'm not sure if that could have been made in another country. It just gives you an example of what is the dynamic of what is going on in Canada at the moment. It's just, it's like a madness that has overtaken people like Trudeau, who you'll see a few of his people. They're starting to look like they've lost their minds. They're talking without having any basis now in reality whatsoever, and it doesn't seem to matter whatever happens at this point, because as the video shows, his message is one of hatred and division and I think this country will carry forward with a positive response, and I think it will ignite this country, and I hope the world. I really aspire to see that happen globally. And of course, if we are successful, then everything changes, because the plan needs Canada. The global plan needs Canada at the center of it. And if Canada can stand up to it, then anything is possible anywhere in the world.
It's funny you should speak about anywhere in the world right now, because what we're looking at right now is not images of anywhere near Canada. This is basically the other end of the world. This is New Zealand. As you can tell, they're in the southern hemisphere, so obviously it's a little bit more summery over there right now. They are picking up speed. I mean, like, I was even sort of like considering today bringing on, one activist from New Zealand to speak about, how their convoy is shaping up, and unfortunately we didn't, quite manage to put that together in time right now, but it's picking up speed, and people are trying to sort of, voice their protest more in various fashions, but they're all, they're not all motorized, but they're all, I want to say, inspired by what you guys are doing in Canada. Now, this could be technically Canada if you look at the snow lying around, but it's actually Helsinki. This is like Northern Europe, Scandinavia, and people are, flocking, towards their government buildings and are trying to basically also besiege them. I don't know if they have this support or the willpower that you guys seem to have to, carry out this very difficult mission. But yeah, I mean, do you see this? I mean, there's actually a winter storm going on there right now in this last bit of the footage, and people, gathered still there, right, in order to be able to, I don't know, like, feel some type of communal sense as they battle this horrible nonsense. And going on further, even here, it's also Helsinki. I mean, like, all of these people, and this is why I love to bring you in, like another Canadian, is they're all inspired, they're all motivated, and as you alluded to, they're all holding their breath. Yeah. As to whether you guys will succeed, because your success will motivate, will push us forward. You guys, without it even knowing, right? You just might well be the domino, right? That if it drops, right, and everything else drops.
Yeah. And that's a good metaphor. Yeah. And I know some people in Finland, and it's a very interesting place right now. There's a lot of energy, as is evident in the video. I think it's amazing. I mean, think about this, right? So on one side you have love and unity and freedom, and on the other hand you have hatred and division. I mean, the universe wants us to win. It's absolutely clear. It's part of the human spirit.
Well, I don't know. There have been dark ages, and sometimes they've lasted for centuries. I mean, they've literally, to this day, we call them dark ages, right? Because there was nothing there but hatred and division and no moving forward and no social development, economic development, technological development, spiritual development whatsoever for hundreds of years. I'm not saying that this is going to be that, right? Because we all need new iPhones every fucking new year, right? But I mean, I'm just so unbelievably, unfortunately, concerned, right, for you guys, because I see you struggle out there, right, and there's so many issues that you have to deal with, right. Otherwise, it would have been easy for me to bring on another German-speaking, like, truck captain right now, because he'd be just sitting in his cab somewhere, putting his feet up. But unfortunately, it's a very uphill battle, and they need to put it. They need to give in their all, right, to even just hang on. And it seems like, even in the coming days, it's going to get much, much tougher, right? So yeah. I want to believe that what you're saying is true. But again, if there's anything that, any Canadians, for whatever reason watching this, right, take away from this program, it's just, brace yourselves. And for God's sake, hold on for dear life, right? Because it's about to get interesting and it's about to get uncomfortable. But this is the part that matters, right? I mean, we've had the great visuals. We've had like the cheerful rhetoric and like people coming together, but now they'll have to fucking stand together, right? And they'll have to show whether they can actually go with this thing to distance, because otherwise, you know, it's not even about the 10 million, you know, that are frozen somewhere. I mean, like, that's just a drop in the bucket, you know, at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
It's about where do you guys take it from here, right? You build a foundation, now run with it, or stand with it, or fight for it, or whatever, right? But it's all coming together right now. And should you guys fail, right, all of the other convoys across the world will fail. That's unfortunate, but that's the case.
Failure is not an option. We don't talk about failing. It's not an option. Imagine that you're 11 days into a national protest, and there is not a single piece of footage of violent behavior. Not one. After 11 days, this cannot be stopped.
Mm. Going back to the very beginning of our show, I mean, we've started talking about what's probably imminent, right? And we've heard you confirm that there are snipers on the roof. We've heard reports of riot police coming in, but we've also heard you talk about, you know, hopeful outcomes of this scenario, where maybe the police, at least, right, at some point will no longer carry out the dirty orders of their, you know, bread givers. I mean, you seem to be very clear cut, right? Your stance is this thing will succeed, right? There's hope on the horizon for you. Now, maybe giving you for all of us, yeah. In the imminent forthcoming days, right? What do you feel is the most important way that people can support you guys in Canada, right? I mean, like, not talking long picture, right? Where we just need hope and love and happiness and, you know, just prayers. What actual actions do you feel people can maybe do to aid, right? Just for the truckers to survive the coming days, which probably will be brutal. Is there anything that comes to mind that's actually, like, I want to say tangible? Because obviously looking there is great. I asked this question one of the trucker captains on Friday, and unfortunately, you know, he had to run. He told me, you know, just believe and just, you know, hope and just love and spread the message, right? That's all great. But what else maybe beyond that can people do?
I think one of the things we're witnessing and being asked to do or to become is just to become more aware of each other. So traditionally, we've been divided into countries, and for many of us, that's as far as our kind of awareness goes, and everything kind of lives and dies inside those borders. I think what we're seeing here and what needs to continue is just a growing awareness of our connections between countries. So do whatever you can to share your awareness that we're all in this together. There's all kinds of ways of doing that. Everybody has different ways of doing that, but it's already started. Obviously, I mean, there's all kinds of donation streams and all those kinds of things. But money. I don't think money ever will be an issue. Honestly, at the end, I just think there's this growing awareness that people have now that what happens in Canada affects all of us. It affects freedom for all of us for the future. And so share that with somebody, share that idea with somebody, find a way to make that grow in your own community, in your own country, share it with Canada. I think we need to share with New Zealand. We need to use the tools that we have of communication to recognize that this is not a national movement, this is a global movement. And there's nothing that you can do that's more important in the next couple of days than to focus on this and to respond in a way that feels comfortable and is appropriate to you. But you need to keep shifting your goals and objectives and what you thought was what your life would look like for this next little period of time. So if you're being asked to do something that is not in keeping exactly with what you thought you were going to be doing, so be it. It's like me. So if I don't, going back to Ottawa, okay, it's not necessarily how I imagined that this would be, but this won't last long. This will be won this will be won in the days and weeks ahead. This will not go much longer than that. Things will happen quickly now.
We have a saying in German, dein Wort in Gottes Gehörgang, which basically translates to, I wish God heard your words. You certainly have, you certainly have all of my support and sympathies and I don't know, best wishes all mushed together into one giant ball of, you know, gratitude for coming on here and obviously, you know, like we wish you nothing but the best.
Thanks, Eli.
I'm sure
Appreciate
every viewer of this program feels the same way. Thank you so much for inspiring us. Please, if you do happen to go back there, which you indicated you might, right? Let people know that Germany is watching, right? And my program, I mean, not so much today, but I'll try to push it more. You know, I'll try to maybe make clips out of it or maybe, you know, share it independently, you know, with other international outlets, is reaching more international viewers as well. I've today spoken to French activists, Belgian activists, Portuguese activists, to somebody from Austria, you know. I've tried to get in contact with people from New Zealand. So many people are in this thing together. All of our eyes are sort of, you know, tilting, you know, towards Canada these days, but we're not, you know, just sitting there idling. You know, everybody's trying to do their part to sort of, you know, like
absolutely
have this thing come to fruition. So what I'm getting at is please, you know, let everybody know we're with you, and whatever you take from that, right? If it gives you some comfort, that's great. You know, if anybody can give, donate, please donate, right? I'm sure it will not have been in vain. And maybe let's stay in touch, let's stay in contact in order for us to have regular updates to see how your very important undertaking is going. All right, this concludes sort of... Yeah, this concludes the official part. Yeah, I was gonna see. I promised to do this before, right? I don't know if you wanna ruin a perfect ending right now or not, but I'm all for it. If you have questions, because you asked, you know, if you could ask me something back in return, reaching over the pond this way this time around. So feel free to do so. If there's anything you want to talk about, you know, what people watching, we can do it right now. Otherwise, you can just stay online. We can talk privately later. Whatever you feel is most productive for whatever you want to know.
Yeah, I think we talked a little bit about just what was happening in Europe in general and Germany specifically, and I think we've touched on that. That's helpful for us, and part of the process once again of us recognizing our union on these things. We're all affected by the same thing, and I think that's given me some you know, some sense of what's going on, and I appreciate you painting a picture of some of the areas of Europe. So thank you for that.
If you do have any questions, because you also seem to be a person who now facilitates the flow of information, right? Feel free to reach out to me, and if I do have the time, you know, despite whatever time difference we may have, right? I'll make sure to find a slot to let you know what I know, and then let's exchange the flow of ideas and information so that, you know, our side is better informed than theirs.
I think that's absolutely critical, and I think that's a very good point.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much for coming on, dear Michael. Now people can follow you, right? Liebe Leute, wenn ihr wollt, könnt ihr dem Michael folgen. Wenn ihr englischsprachig seid und so lange zugeguckt habt, dann wollt ihr vielleicht auch sehen, was der Mann sonst noch so zutage fördert. Er ist kein professioneller Journalist, aber er macht seinen Job besser als viele professionelle Journalisten da draußen. Und ihr könnt ihm folgen auf Twitter, und zwar @Michael P. Breton. Right? Also Michael.Breton auf uns, also für uns, für Deutsche gesagt. Und ja, da könnt ihr sehr gerne schauen, was er so macht. Und ich gebe euch sehr gerne auch noch seinen Twitter hier mit rein als Link. Dann könnt ihr den vielleicht auch klicken, weil die Leute werden ansonsten immer wieder fragen, wie schreibt man das, wie schreibt man das? Dann zeige ich euch das einfach mal. Michael P. Breton. I'll just give people, you know, the direct link to your Twitter, because you seem to be quite the popular fellow. I just noticed you have 22,000 followers on Twitter. That's actually quite significant. Folgt Michael auf Twitter. All right, perfect. And yeah, so I believe we did our best. Thank you so much for having come on. And we'll stay in touch. As I said before, there's so much still to talk about. Obviously, there's a great night ahead, and a great many deal of things can happen right now. But whatever transpires, right? We'll stand together, and you'll be on the ground. And people are thanking you right now here in the chat. So hang in there, go out there, spread the love, spread the word, and just keep fighting. I suppose this is the biggest fight of our lives. And
it is the biggest fight of our lives. It is the biggest fight of our lives, Eli, but we stand together.
All right. Thank you so much for having come on, Mike, and I'll be in touch with you for the moment. Goodbye to Canada.
Bye. Thanks, Eli.
Have a good one.
You too.
All right. So, das war der Michael P. Breton. Liebe Freunde, es war nicht einfach heute für alle von uns. Auch ich musste erstmal wieder warm werden, bevor so ein bisschen die Synapsen ordentlich gefeuert haben und ich auch wieder ordentlich Englisch sprechen konnte. Das war so ein bisschen Rumgehacke am Anfang, habe ich das Gefühl. Aber nichtsdestotrotz, ich bin froh, dass er nicht aus der Quebec-Gegend kommt und ich dieses Gespräch hier in französischem Quebecois abhalten müsste, weil da würde selbst ich an meine linguistischen Grenzen kommen. Und witzigerweise hatte ich, bevor ich heute Michael mir ins Programm holen konnte, tatsächlich eine Dame angefragt, die so ein bisschen aus der Region kommt. Jetzt bin ich froh, dass ich Michael hatte und nicht sie. Das hat nichts mit Sexismus zu tun, einfach nur mit der Schwierigkeit der Sprache. Aber vielleicht werden wir auch sie für eine zusätzliche Perspektive uns noch einmal in den Stream holen. Meine Hoffnung ist ja, dass wir wahrscheinlich oder hoffentlich auch die deutschsprachigen Trucker noch einmal dazu bewegen können, uns hier Rede und Antwort zu stehen. Aber aktuell war das, wie gesagt, heute nicht möglich. Ich bin mir aber sicher, ihr könnt nachvollziehen, dass ich dieses Interview mit dieser wichtigen Message nicht permanent unterbrechen konnte, um dazwischen zu haken und das für euch zu übersetzen. Ja, also das wäre einfach, sage ich mal, dem Fluss des Gespräches nicht förderlich gewesen und wir haben ja auch versucht, ein gewisses Narrativ hier aufzubauen und auch schön für euch zu Ende zu führen und vielleicht wird dieses Interview auch noch mehr Menschen erreichen, außerhalb unserer kleinen Blase, wenn ich es jetzt nochmal separiert irgendwie auf Telegram Michael oder anderen Leuten zur Verfügung stelle. Also nicht, dass diese Leute international in Kanada ohnehin schon wissen, wie es denen in Kanada geht, aber vielleicht könnte das ja Franzosen oder meinetwegen Engländer, also Großbritannien, ja, oder Portugiesen oder wie gesagt Österreicher oder Neuseeländer oder was weiß denn ich wen, ja, noch irgendwie inspirieren, etwas zu tun. Das bewegt sich ja einiges dieser Tage und vielleicht kann ich den einen oder anderen damit so ein bisschen erreichen. So, Cassiopeia sagt, hast du gut gemacht, Eli, das freut mich, Dankeschön. Liebe Freunde, wenn ihr findet, dass ich es gut gemacht habe, bitte vergesst nicht, mich zu unterstützen, ja, nur dank eurer Unterstützung kann ich hier auf Sendung gehen, kann diese Sendung vorbereiten. Es ist in der Regel ein Prozess eines ganzen Tages, ja, diese Gäste dann zu akquirieren, mit denen Vorgespräche zu führen, sich ein bisschen halt zu belesen, die Quellen dann abzugleichen mit der ganzen Information, die den ganzen Tag reinkommt, um dann auch nur eine einzige Sendung rauszuhauen. Und in der Regel mache ich danach noch einen Bonus-Stream. Heute nicht, weil morgen bin ich für euch unterwegs, 10 Stunden im Auto. Also könnt ihr euch ausmalen, bin ich weit unterwegs oder eben in eine weite Stadt. Aber es wird sich auch morgen lohnen und ich werde meine Kamera morgen anschmeißen und hoffe, dass ihr das dann seht und dass ihr das dann würdigt. In diesem Sinne, vielen lieben Dank, wenn ihr mich unterstützt habt. Eine Person macht das religiös und hat das auch heute schon getan, lieber Dominik Huth. Mein Guter, danke dir für die 3 Euro. Die sind heile hier bei mir angekommen. Vielen lieben Dank. Wenn irgendjemand sonst sich hier noch anschließen möchte für dieses doch sehr ungewöhnliche Interview heute, dieses Mal komplett in Englisch geführt, dann würde mich das sehr, sehr freuen, wenn euch das auch wichtig ist, um euch so ein bisschen auch zu zeigen, wie versatil ich hier bin und ja, wie viele unterschiedliche Seiten es in meinem kleinen Kopf hier gibt und vor allen Dingen, welche unterschiedlichen Themen für mich und hoffentlich auch für euch wichtig sind. Gut, liebe Freunde, das soll es ansonsten gewesen sein. Ich gucke gerade noch mal in den Chat, ob ihr noch irgendwelche Hinweise für mich habt, was ich gut, besser oder schlechter machen soll. Wir haben aktuell noch ein bisschen die Möglichkeit, miteinander darüber zu chatten. Dominik, der liebe Dominik, über den ich gerade hier gesprochen habe, der ist auch mit am Start. Der schreibt, aber danke, dass ich so beliebt bin, dass man mich kopieren muss. Du bist unkopierbar, lieber Dominik Huth, nur du. Ja, ich will nur dich allein. Video auf YouTube, Gedichte aus der Zukunft. 1 Million Spaziergänger in über 2300 Orten. Der Montag ist befreit. Hier eine kleine Auswahl aufteilen und speichern. Sagt E.B. auf YouTube. Das ist spannend. Stichwort, was ihr auf YouTube sagt. Ich gucke mal, ob ich das gerade mal gelauncht kriege. Gebt mir eine Sekunde. Ich habe vergessen, das zu starten. Das ist irgendwie so eine neue Extra-Funktion, die ich eigentlich hätte nutzen können, aber auf die ich irgendwie jetzt zu spät komme. Mal gucken, ob ich die jetzt nochmal anschmeißen kann. Start und Enter YouTube und Connect. Mal gucken, ob ich das hinbekomme. Ad hoc wird es wahrscheinlich nicht klappen, wie so oft. Es lädt. Lädt es auch etwas ein? Ja, das hat es tatsächlich getan. Okay, genau. So, Achtung, dann probiere ich das mal. Ich mache es hier einfach mal an. So, und dann klicke ich einfach mal hier. Warte mal. Wo sind wir denn da? Das hier. Das habe ich euch gerade vorgelesen. Video auf YouTube, Gedichte aus der Zukunft, 1 Million Spaziergänger in über 2300 Orten. Der Montag ist befreit. Hier eine kleine Auswahl, oft teilen und speichern. Also warum lese ich insbesondere das gerade vor? Nicht einfach nur, weil es zu den letzten Chats auf YouTube gehört, sondern auch, weil ja, ich immer wieder sage, macht jeden Tag der Woche zu einem Montag. Es ist gut, wenn wir montags uns versammeln und montags spazieren gehen, aber jeder Tag der Woche müsste ein Montag sein, mit demselben Nachdruck, mit dem wir uns versammeln und Montag eben in Sachsen teilweise ein Stück weit unregierbar machen für die Regierung halt eben hier. Ja, mit diesem selben Nachdruck sollten wir auch versuchen, alle anderen Tage der Woche eben auf die Straße zu gehen, ja, und unbequem zu sein für diesen Staat, wenn er uns hier in die Schranken weist und eindeutig nicht mehr das Volk vertritt, das sie gewählt hat. Es gibt auch einige wenige Ausnahmen. Ich habe, wie gesagt, den Kamenzer Bürgermeister und seine Rede ja selber mitbekommen können. Dankeschön, lieber Weitermachen für die 5 Euro, die du gerade geschickt hast. Die werde ich verwenden zum, Achtung, Weitermachen, natürlich. Sehr, sehr lieb von dir. Aramis hat jetzt gerade auch nochmal was reingeschickt. Vielen lieben Dank. Das sind 10 Euro von dir. Lieber Dietmar, ich glaube, den Vornamen kann ich sagen. Danke, danke, danke also für diese Unterstützung. Und ja, wie gesagt, macht jeden Tag der Woche zu einem Montag. Ja, und dass das geht und dass ihr dafür Anlaufstellen habt, dafür werde ich mich morgen 10 Stunden ins Auto setzen, um euch das zu beweisen. Auch wenn ich weit dafür fahren muss. Ja, wenn ich 10 Stunden fahren muss, heißt das ja nicht, dass ihr 10 Stunden fahren müsst. Vielleicht seid ihr nur 10 Laufminuten davon entfernt. Und dann habt ihr wirklich keine Ausrede, das nächste Mal nicht mit am Start zu sein. Ich werde in eine Stadt fahren, in der jede Woche 14, hat man mir heute gesagt, 14 Spaziergänge stattfinden. 14 Spaziergänge, ja, an unterschiedlichen Tagen. Gut, dazu muss man natürlich sagen, in Dresden allein gibt es allein an einem Montag 15 Spaziergänge, individuelle einzelne Spaziergänge natürlich. Also ich hoffe, die Rechnung ist nicht so aufgebaut. Aber nein, soweit ich das verstanden habe, ist das wirklich halt jeden einzelnen Tag der Woche. Und ja, wer sich auskennt in Deutschland, wird schon ein bisschen also wissen, wo ich morgen dann aufzufinden sein werde. Aber alle anderen, ihr könnt morgen reingucken und dann werdet ihr sehen, wie man einen Mittwoch zum Beispiel zu einem Montag machen kann im Sinne der Spaziergänge. Gut, was sehe ich dann sonst noch hier auf YouTube? Ihr redet so ein bisschen untereinander. Dominik Huth schreibt hier noch ein bisschen was. Dirk fragt sich, wo er wohnt. Das ist auch irgendwie komisch. So, KTA, du bist witzig. Jetzt nochmal zusammenfassen, was der Trucker gesagt hat, bitte. Also erstens, es war kein Trucker. Ja? Gut, das kannst du wahrscheinlich nicht wissen, wenn du kein Englisch sprichst. Ja, dann wirst du wahrscheinlich davon ausgegangen sein, dass es ein Trucker. Nein, Michael hat einen Background, wie man so schön sagt, in eigentlich etwas ganz anderem. Ich glaube, der kommt irgendwo aus der Bildungsebene. Also irgendwie, ich weiß nicht, ob er Lehrer war oder Dozent oder was auch immer. Auf jeden Fall hat er irgendwas mit Ausbildung zu tun und ist jetzt wahrscheinlich, also er sieht jetzt etwas älter aus, der Herr. Ich würde ihm einen frühen Ruhestand wünschen, nur wahrscheinlich ist er in einem Unruhestand. Jemand, der selber es auf sich genommen hat, eben nach Ottawa zu fahren, um von dort zu berichten. Letzte Woche, als er noch Markus Heinz ist damit gemeint, Rede und Antwort gestanden hat, da war er noch in Ottawa. Diesen Samstag hat er sich gesagt, okay, er muss sich mal zurückziehen, ein bisschen Kräfte tanken. Aber jetzt, nachdem er gehört hat, dass alle wieder reingerufen werden, ja, nach Ottawa, weil die Polizei sich anmaßt, die Bereitschaftspolizei, die dort zusammengezogen wird, ja, vielleicht hart durchzugreifen, da bereitet er sich auch vor, wie viele andere übrigens auch wahrscheinlich, eben nochmal zurück nach Ottawa zu kommen. Und er sagt selbst, ja, man kann die Zukunft natürlich nicht voraussagen, aber sein Gefühl sagt ihm, dieser Geist ist aus der Flasche. Ja. Also Trudeau wird das politisch gesehen wahrscheinlich nicht überstehen und mit ihm auch sein gesamtes Regime, weil er sagt, das Militär, das ist zumindest die Meinung von Michael, der jetzt eben gerade hier auf Sendung war, das Militär wird sich nicht hinter Trudeau stellen und wenn die Bereitschaftspolizei irgendwann ihre Gummiknüppel an den Truckern eben zerbrochen hat und die auch ihre Gummigeschosse oder was auch immer dann irgendwann leer gefeuert haben, dann wird das Militär eben gerufen, aber hoffentlich nicht nachrücken und spätestens dann fällt im Prinzip dieses ganze Regime, weil dann werden die Leute sehen, ja, wer wen tatsächlich unterstützt. Ja, mal ganz, ganz grob kurz zusammengefasst, wobei ich 99% von dem, was er gesagt hat, dann dabei auslasse. Ja, das ist so ein bisschen die Synopsis von meinem Gespräch gerade mit ihm. Gut, ansonsten, es ist noch eine Spende gerade reingekommen, 10,61 €, also mit ausgeglichenen PayPal-Gebühren. Vielen herzlichen Dank an die Bärbel. Mike, du wurdest vorhin eingeblendet und Aramis74, die habe ich auch schon gedankt. Vielen herzlichen Dank, dass ihr euch da habt erweichen lassen, was das angeht. Ich gucke gerade noch mal in den Chat, weil einige Leute schreiben hier mit orangen unterlegter Schrift meinen Namen. Elia T. schreibt, Dominik, ich werde hier verhöhnt. Bitte einen Schlüssel. Wie bitte einen Schlüssel, Dominik? Was denn für ein Schlüssel? Dirk schreibt, Dominik Huth hat einen Doppelgänger im Chat. Welcher ist der richtige? Ah, der hat einen Doppelgänger im Chat. Welcher ist der Richtige? Uli, ich weiß nicht, ob du am Start bist, aber wir müssen der Seite mal auf den Weg, der Sache mal auf den Grund gehen, wenn es tatsächlich so ist. Ja, und ach so, die ist der Schlüssel, okay. Spannend, okay, also wenn es einen Dirk Hut gibt, der sich deinen Namen gegeben hat, ja, und jetzt nach einem Schlüssel verlangt, so öffentlich, was ich eigentlich meinem Dominik gar nicht zutrauen würde, dann wirst du vermutlich der Dominik sein, der, ja, der einfach nur versucht, sich hier Moderationsrechte zu erschleichen, aber das werden wir natürlich nicht zulassen. Ist der schon wieder da? Fragt die Uli, hab doch schon einen gelöscht. Ja, offensichtlich scheint noch einer am Start zu sein. Ich kann mir nicht vorstellen, dass unser Dominik nach Moderationsrechten fragen würde. Also insofern haben die sich wahrscheinlich jetzt gerade schon so ein bisschen hier geoutet. Aber nichtsdestotrotz, walte deines Amtes, liebe Uli. Ich vertraue da deinem Judgment und wie gesagt, also deiner Einschätzung. Und der Dominik, der echte Dominik, liebe Freunde, der kann sich ja jeder Tage bei mir melden und kann mir sagen, ob wir vielleicht zu Unrecht sein Konto gelöscht haben oder nicht. Und ich habe da auch auf jeden Fall Mittel und Wege, mit ihm in Kontakt zu treten, um das ja rauszufinden, was da so rechtmäßig ist. Toller Stream, Eni, sagt der Sven. Lieber Sven, mein Guter, ich melde mich bei dir. Ich sag's dir jetzt gerne auch schon hier live im Stream. Ich hoffe, du hörst das jetzt gerade mit. Samstag wird es vermutlich nicht werden, aber Montag, ja, könnte tatsächlich klappen. Und dann freue ich mich, bei dir zu sein. Und ich hoffe, dass es klappt, aber da werde ich dann nochmal genauer dazu Bescheid geben. Wenn ich einen LKW fahre, dann ist sogar nur ein Leihwagen, weil unsere Firma keinen eigenen LKW hat. Aha, okay. Andi bedankt sich auch gerade. Das ist cool, Andi. Ich hoffe, du genähst, wo auch immer du gerade bist, von deinem schweren Unfall, den du da überlebt hast. Wie die deutschen Trucker demonstrieren im Geheimen. Achso, ja, Stichwort deutsche Trucker, die demonstrieren. Da will ich dazu nochmal ganz kurz ein Wort sagen. Nach allem, was ich mitbekommen habe, liebe Freunde, gibt es aktuell keinen nennenswerten Protest irgendwelcher Trucker oder irgendetwas, was man Konvoi nennen kann in Deutschland. Ich habe da den, wie heißt er, nicht Alexander, nicht André, Roman, ja, den russischsprachigen Deutschaktivisten oder deutschsprachigen Russlandaktivisten, wie auch immer. Also er hat irgendwie halt russische Wurzeln. Den Roman, den habe ich, wie wir alle, gesehen auf Telegram, ja, und in seinem Kanal, wie er versucht hat, da irgendwie was auf die Beine zu stellen und dann hat er traurigerweise irgendwie festhalten müssen, ja, der Konvoi in Berlin, der bestand irgendwie aus genau einem Auto, nämlich seinem. Ja, also dass niemand sonst gekommen ist. Aber wie gesagt, nehmt das nicht für bare Münze. Ich stecke da nicht so ganz tief drin, aber ich muss euch sagen, dass, wie gesagt, einige Leute aktuell sich die Fragen stellen, ob denn aus Deutschland was kommt. Und bis jetzt, muss ich sagen, habe ich nichts davon mitbekommen, gesehen, gehört, ja, oder kann das irgendwie bestätigen. Ja, es gibt irgendwie Gerüchte, dass aus Österreich irgendwas kommen sollte, aus Italien soll sogar irgendwas kommen, die Niederländer angeblich wollen sich auch noch bewegen, dann gibt es Gerüchte, dass man am 14. Februar in Brüssel zusammen aufschlagen will, dann heißt es auf einmal, nein, alle sollen am 15. Februar nach Brüssel, also ich würde ja tatsächlich sogar nach Brüssel fahren, liebe Leute, ne? Ihr kennt mich, ich war da sogar schon vor 2 Wochen dort, also daran liegt es nicht, ich glaube nur, dass aktuell keine Trucks auf jeden Fall von deutschem Boden dahin rollen und in Berlin auf jeden Fall, dass diese Aktion, soweit ich es gesehen habe, komplett ins Wasser gefallen ist. Was ja nichts heißen muss, wir haben ja auch andere Wege, wir brauchen vielleicht keinen motorisierten Widerstand, der Widerstand zu Fuß, ja, der bewährt sich ja eigentlich auch gerade ganz gut, aber wie gesagt, vergesst ja auch nicht, ne? Also Kanada und USA sind ja auch ganz anderes geografisch, ne? Ganz andere Länder und auch kulturell und da hat auch ein Truck einen ganz anderen Stellenwert kulturell gesehen. Insofern, ja, es ist, was es ist. Ja, ich würde mir wahrscheinlich auch wünschen, dass man in Deutschland sowas auf die Beine stellen kann. Ich habe gehört, Bauern oder sowas haben sowas mal versucht mit ihren Traktoren, aber ansonsten, war da leider nicht so viel. Gut, Dominik sagt nicht, dass meine Tasse an den Fake Dominik geht. Nein, lieber Dominik, garantiert nicht. Deine Tasse ist, bevor der Fake Dominik sich eingeschaltet hat, bereits an deine Adresse rausgegangen. Und ich hoffe, du wirst uns bald zutoasten können und ebenfalls aus dieser wunderbaren Tasse etwas trinken können. Wenn ihr, liebe Freunde, ja, wenn diese Streams sagt, Mensch, die Streams von Edi, die sind bestimmt so gut, weil er aus einer magischen Tasse trinkt, dann habt ihr absolut recht. Diese Tasse, die könnt ihr aber auch erwerben. Ja, ich teile meine Magie sehr gerne mit euch. Und die findet ihr auf etvideocontent.com/shop. Ja, genauso wie übrigens alle anderen, meine Bonus-Streams, die ich dort zur Verfügung stelle, die könnt ihr dort auch erwerben, wenn ihr wollt. Und ja, also nicht nur schmeckt alles aus dieser Tasse doppelt so gut, das ist die Tasse, ja, wie sonst, die von der Dominik auf YouTube gerade spricht. Ihr könnt sogar auch noch eine davon euch eben in euer Leben holen und es gibt sie auf etvideocontent.com/shop. Wunderbar, ja, also kann ich wirklich nur allen empfehlen. Ich glaube, wir haben noch 39 Tassen und ihr könnt jeweils immer nur aus Sicherheitsgründen eine bestellen, damit nicht irgendein Mensch auf dumme Gedanken kommt. Aber wenn ihr wirklich mehr davon haben wollt, könnt ihr euch auch im Kontaktformular bei meiner wunderbaren Assistentin Katja melden. Und solltet ihr nicht fake sein, ja, und echt sein und vor allen Dingen Vorauskasse machen, dann kann man euch auch sehr gerne von den 39 Tassen ein paar mehr zukommen lassen. Gut, liebe Freunde, das soll es gewesen sein. Irgendwie ist hier ich habe hier ein Gerät, mit dem ich normalerweise umschalten kann, aber aktuell scheint das hier eingeschlafen zu sein. Liebe Freunde, das soll es gewesen sein für heute. Bobby Wayne sagt, danke für den Stream, wenn ihr es mir nicht glaubt. Hier, da seht ihr das nochmal. Boom. Da, danke für den Stream, Bobby Wayne. Dankeschön, dass du reingeschaut hast. Das ist super cool von euch. Aramis74, der du vorhin etwas gespendet hast. Vielen herzlichen Dank, lieber Aramis. Danke dir für deine Unterstützung und vor allen Dingen schön, dass auch du da warst. Ich möchte auch die D-Live-Community hier mit einschließen. Oh, jetzt ist gerade ein bisschen was gekommen von der Annemarie. Liebe Annemarie, du hättest das gar nicht machen müssen, aber vielen herzlichen Dank. Wenn auch ihr im Nachgang jetzt noch sagt, Mensch, Eli, so klasse, was du da gemacht hast. Hier hast du nochmal ein 20. Dann freue ich mich natürlich darüber. Es hat sich eben gerade die Annemarie gemeldet und die hat gemeint, dass ich ihr 2,5 20s wert bin. Ja, also 50 Euro. Vielen lieben Dank von dir, meine Gute. Das werde ich morgen auf jeden Fall an Fahrtgeld brauchen, weil ich werde morgen 10 Stunden im Auto sein, um für euch von einem anderen Ort eben zu berichten. Aber so kennt ihr mich. Ich bin der rasende Reporter, der selten still sitzen kann. Heute habe ich es mal geschafft. Und wie gesagt, ich gebe mir die größte Mühe für euch alle. Ah ja, das wollte ich gerade nochmal erwähnt haben, wollte ihm nochmal gedankt haben. Hier, und zwar der Roman, der russischsprachige Deutschaktivist oder deutschsprachige Russlandaktivist oder wie auch immer. Ja, seine Gruppe heißt Free People. Ich weiß nicht so wirklich, was ich davon halten soll. Technisch sieht das ein bisschen nach einer ich sag mal so, nach einem noch nicht ganz ausgereiften Produkt aus, aber er hat das Herz am rechten Fleck und er macht eine Menge für uns. Also insofern guckt einfach mal bei Free People rein, sowohl auf Telegram als auch, ich glaube, Free People Online heißt seine Webseite. Ich gehe gerade mal drauf. Free People Online, glaube ich. Nee, das ist sie nicht. Ich hatte sogar hier mal ein Kärtchen von ihm liegen. Mal gucken. Ah, ich habe es tatsächlich noch da. Schaut mal hier, Free People. Siehst du, lieber Roman, man hat mir das zugesteckt und ich habe es immer noch. Da, Free People, gemeinsam stark. Und ich gucke einfach gerade mal drauf. free-people.online. Okay, gut, ich hatte das Minus vergessen. Wahrscheinlich war Free People Online schon vergeben. Free People Online, genau. Dann kommt man auf diese Seite. Und da seht ihr ihn auch. Das ist er. Der, ich mache mal hier dazu den Twitch-Chat mal aus. Das ist ja der Roman, der Mann, der den Konvoi in Berlin eigenhändig anstoßen wollte, der aktuell damit noch, sage ich, gescheitert ist. Und der hat seine eigene Seite unter free-people.online. Da könnt auch ihr hingehen, liebe Freunde. Ja, hoch. Jetzt gibt irgendwie hier die Internet-Connection nach. Irgendwie geht da nichts mehr bei mir. Ich gucke mal, ob ich das hin kann. Nein, kann ich auch nicht machen. Gut, also stellt euch einfach vor, dass ich jetzt hier reingezoomt wäre. Und aus irgendwelchen Gründen will das jetzt hier nicht mehr. Deshalb muss ich wahrscheinlich auch diesen Stream so bald wie möglich mal abrunden. Vielen lieben Dank nochmal. Eine Person hat sich gerade hier noch bequatschen lassen, der liebe Philipp, für einen Fünfer, den er mir hier zugeschickt hat. Danke, 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 liebe Freunde. Aber das soll es jetzt endgültig gewesen sein. Gut, also, liebe Freunde, morgen sehen wir uns schon wieder. Ihr müsst also gar nicht so lange darauf warten, dass ich wiederkomme, denn ich werde 10 Stunden fahren, aber ihr werdet 10 Stunden entweder schlafen oder arbeiten oder was auch immer ihr da tut. Ich freue mich, euch alle wiederzusehen, weil das werden wir auf jeden Fall. Ich bin mir sicher, einige von euch werden reinschauen. Ich bereite nur kurz was vor. Und genau, das nehme ich mal hier ganz kurz mit. Moment, hab stumm schalten, nicht, dass ihr das jetzt schon sofort hört. Jetzt mache ich hier nochmal Pause und da mache ich das wieder an. Genau, und dann werde ich die Bluetooth-Kopfhörer auch nochmal anmachen, dann sollte das hoffentlich auch klappen. Da muss ich jetzt gerade nichts spielen. Also, lange Rede, kurzer Sinn, liebe Freunde, ich bin morgen wieder für euch unterwegs und ich werde mich entweder schon von unterwegs melden. Ihr kennt ja mein beliebtes Format, Eli, ne, on Tour oder Eli aus dem Auto oder wie auch immer ich das nenne. Wenn ich es wirklich nicht aushalte, ja, während der 5 Stunden Fahrt hin, dann melde ich mich auch schon von dort. Ansonsten sehen wir uns spätestens abends irgendwann wieder. Und dann geht es für mich zwar dann nach der Veranstaltung nochmal 5 Stunden zurück, aber das soll der Sache keinen Abbruch tun. Es ist wichtig, dass wir das tun und ich werde deshalb mit gutem Beispiel vorangehen. Ja, ich hoffe, ihr seid dann auch morgen mit dabei. Morgen ist auch noch ein Tag und schaut nach Kanada, wenn ihr könnt. Ja, die haben ja eine Zeitverzögerung von, ich glaube, 6 Stunden. Also man munkelt, ja, dass eventuell diese Riot Police, also diese Bereitschaftspolizei, eben gerade in den Nachtstunden, ja, den Kanadas Nachtstunden, also in jetzt so ungefähr 6 bis 7 Stunden deutscher Zeit, ja, also ab 7 Uhr morgens ungefähr, könnte man wahrscheinlich sagen, dass die wahrscheinlich dann den Zugriff dort entweder praktizieren werden oder aber eben verlegen werden, man weiß es nicht. Aber irgendwas sagt mir, das könnte dort übel ausgehen. Und ja, wie gesagt, merkt euch, wenn tatsächlich halt alles ausgehen sollte, keine Streams mehr aus Kanada kommen, aus Ottawa, dann ist das leider kein gutes Zeichen. Aber bis dahin hoffe ich, dass es nicht dazu kommt. Und stattdessen sage ich euch, was ich euch immer sage an dieser Stelle, liebe Freunde, es ist spät, aber wenn ihr heute Abend nur eine Sache tut, bevor euch die Äuglein zufallen, lasst es bitte, bitte das Denken sein, denn das wird in der Regel eine produktive Angelegenheit für alle Beteiligten. In diesem Sinne, macht es gut, aber ich freue mich, euch alle schon sehr bald wiederzusehen, liebe Freunde, und bis dahin, ciao, ich bin raus, euer Eli.